June 6th, 1944. April 4th, 1968. April 9th, 1865. April 14th, 1865. The Great Depression. September 22nd, 1862. May 26th through June 6th, 2020. And June 1st, 2020.
Okay. Like I said in the opening, as well as the disclaimer at the beginning and in the voiceover, this is going to be a pretty difficult video to watch. All of those dates I referenced early on with that imagery have been turning points in both American history and world history. And I think we may have hit one of those again just 10 days ago. When George Floyd was murdered by a police officer for no reason, that visceral engagement that we all saw was horrifying. A man crawling out for his life, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And then the casual indifference, the false story that the police put out, and people got angry, and rightfully so. But here's the thing, if you're white, like me, and you're just noticing this now, that's a major problem. This has been going on for longer than we care to think about, and our black brothers and sisters have been telling us this for decades, if not centuries. I myself have had run-ins with the police which are completely ridiculous because I have black curly hair and I can grow a beard like this and I can get pretty tan because I'm of Mediterranean descent. But you know what happens when I'm at the airport? I get pulled out of line. Because me, a white guy, just because they're tan and have a beard and curly hair, black curly hair, gets racially profiled. And then we get into the issue of brutality and fascism and all of these things that we've seen in history before that we, the country, my grandparents, fought to rid the world of. Now, America has never been a perfect place. We've always taken great pride in advancing our society and trying to make the imperfect better over time. Sometimes we don't get it right, but we do eventually. I'm going to tell you a story tonight, well, a couple actually, that may give you some pause of where I'm coming from and may help you understand maybe you don't really quite get this. The names have all been changed, as I said, in the post leading up to this, and they're video game characters. They don't have any correlation to the gender of the people involved, and the situation, the time of year has been changed to make sure that those who didn't want to be not necessarily outed, but who may remember this, who don't want to be involved in this, so they don't have to relive it in the way I'm going to right now, and the way that my friend who this happened to relives every single day of his life. So let's call my friend Samus. So Samus is a friend of mine. We've known each other for 20 some odd years. And we were on a team together. I'm not going to tell you what team, so you can't look that up on the internet. But we were on a team when we were in school together, and we were at a game. Samus was one of the best players on our team. He was a a phenomenal athlete and someone we relied on to make sure that the team actually ran properly. I, at the time, was just a bench player, and I kept the stats because I'm a math nerd. But one game, it was a home game, and we had gotten out of the dressing room, get onto the court, and this is a home game. I mean, it's friendly confines, friendly territory. Well, some of the people who were fans there from a certain part of the country where we were playing, again, home game here, kept shouting to Samus, "Oh, I bet that effing N-word can't do this," and "I bet that fucking monkey is dumb as shit." And this went on behind the bench for most of the game. Now, you could only hear this when you were either on the bench or in timeouts, or because these people were in the third row and you could hear them. Well, to make matters worse, Samus at the time had a white significant other. And after the game, most people were nice to him and nice to us. They had the audacity to kiss their significant other. We were on, hanging out a little while longer with the rest of the team, shaking hands, doing all of that stuff. When we finally got out of the locker room, we got dressed and showered and everything like that, Samus's significant other had a message on her car. I don't use this word because it's awful and it's something that I don't think should ever be used by anyone. And I'm not going to use it here. I'm going to censor myself. But it said fucking N-word lover in glitter paint. And I remember being horrified that people from our own fans would do that to someone that I cared about, a teammate that it's just wrong. But fucking glitter paint? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, anyway, this situation proceeded throughout the rest of the season and never got any better. And that wasn't very long ago. That was in the late 90s. The other story I'm going to tell you tonight is about a class trip that my 9th grade class went on to Washington, D.C. in the Baltimore Harbor area. We went down there for a week. We slept on a boat. It was fun. But when we were there, the Holocaust Museum had just opened up. So we went because, history is important. My great uncle was a tank commander in World War II, and he was in the group that went into Berlin. He was there on D-Day. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge. Most of his stories growing up for me were about them knocking over wineries in occupied France and taking champagne and stuff like that. But later, as he got older, he started to tell me the real stuff. Those stories were just to mask what they had seen, the horrors they had witnessed. And my grandfather, both of my grandfathers actually served in the South Pacific. One was a Marine, one was in the Navy. and they saw those type of horrors as well, not nearly to the level of the Nazis, but it wasn't pleasant either over there. But my great uncle's story that he told me about when they went into Berlin and when they saw the devastation, and then the people, when they liberated the camps. First of all, anybody you know who denies that the Holocaust ever happened is not only full of shit, but a terrible, terrible person. So I wouldn't associate with them. So in 9th grade, we went to the Holocaust Museum, and I remember walking in there and seeing the pictures for the first time in my life. And I had seen history documentaries. I'm an avid History Channel watcher. I'm a huge history nerd. But they have these letters, and they have just this horrific experience that these people witnessed. And what's amazing is, as terrible as that was, and I remember sitting on the bench crying, just a little bit of crying. And when you're 13 or 14 years old, you don't want to cry in front of other people, because as a boy, that means, oh, you're a wimp. A classmate of mine was sitting next to me. We both cried. But the stories that I was told were worse than what I saw, and what I saw was unbelievably awful. So when I see things that I learned about in history class and that my grandparents told me happened, and when my grandmother 4 years ago now saw our current occupant of the White House speak for the first time, she said Il Duce, which is the nickname of Benito Mussolini, who was the fascist dictator in Italy during World War II. They know of what they speak. To put it this way, if you are against Antifa, that means you are pro-fascist. Antifa is short for anti-fascism. My grandparents were in the greatest anti-fascist force in the world and fought their guts out for 4 years to rid the planet of it. And I will not dishonor their memory by allowing it to come back. They're all gone now, and not everybody has a personal connection, but I did. And I cannot underestimate how bad things are right now. The brutality we are witnessing from our police force that's supposed to protect us. Well, you know what? They're not protecting us. Our black brothers and sisters have been telling us this for decades, and now that we've seen what they're willing to do on camera, imagine what happens when there were no cameras. Imagine what happens when they're off camera now. This has to stop. It just has to stop. If you are a racist, you've got to ask yourself why. Because here's a little history lesson. The only reason you have white skin, my friend, is that your ancestors, thousands of years ago, migrated out of sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, we are all from sub-Saharan Africa. All Homo sapiens are from sub-Saharan Africa. Your ancestors migrated up to the northern continent, and because there was less sunlight up there, your skin had to adapt to that environment because it was cold and we didn't get a lot of sun, which means that the amount of melanin in our skin needed to be decreased so we could absorb more vitamin D to live. That is literally the only difference between you and somebody who is brown. That's it. You are the same. And you can say, oh, I don't see color. Well, that's bullshit too. Everybody does. But it's how you react to that and how you acknowledge it that's the true measure of it. I have black friends, I have Asian friends, I have gay friends, straight friends, white friends, Indian friends of all stripes. And maybe it's because I was brought up in that diverse environment and have always, kind of not had a problem with it. But if you don't like somebody just because they look different than you or they're dark, what is wrong with you? It's stupid. If it's insecurity, figure it out. If it's because you don't understand that you are the minority on this planet because your ancestors came from a cold climate and you have less melanin in your skin, that's incredibly stupid. The only way this is going to end, and this brutality is going to end, is if we all decide at once, which we seem to be doing en masse, which is why I think we may have hit one of those points, that it's enough. We've had enough. And another thing I want to say too, if you spend a lot of time online and you're watching a lot of YouTube videos, for example, I make cooking videos. I don't really talk about politics or anything else, but sometimes you may be recommended something that's not food related from my channel. I try really hard to make sure that doesn't happen, but white supremacy is pernicious, it is very well organized, and it is evil. The Confederacy were white supremacists. And to give you a sense of context of how bad the Confederacy was, they were, first of all, traitors. Second of all, traitors. And third, they wanted to own black people. They wanted to secede from the Union because they wanted to own other human beings. They wanted to keep doing that. And they had the 1/16th law. So if you had 1% or something ridiculous, the Nazis thought the Confederacy's eugenics were too extreme. That's how bad the Confederacy was. So if you have any romantic notions of the antebellum South, dismiss them. Read real history. Stop with the revisionism. If you're a fan of Birth of the Nation or the Klansmen or any other or even Gone with the Wind for that matter, it's bullshit. It's historical revisionism. These guys that are white supremacists are evil. And don't ever think you can reason with them, because you can't. There's a great article by a former white supremacist who got out of the movement and helps others transition out. But even he says, look, you can't reason with people who are extremists, because every time you give, every time you give a little bit, they'll want more. They're never satisfied until they get exactly what they want, and even then, the circle will continue to get smaller. If you think the fascists aren't going to come for you because you're white, I suggest you read a little history about Nazi Germany. They will always come for you. It may not be now, it may be later, but that circle of the fascist always gets smaller and gets more and more brutal as the people realize what they're up against. I am anti-fascism. My grandparents fought the war of all wars to end fascism. We rebuilt Europe with the Marshall Plan. We have great allies. For the last 76 years, we have had an amazing world order that is based in liberal democracy, and that's something we have to preserve. The last 10 days have been horrific. We have seen the President of the United States gas his own people with tear gas in Lafayette Park, which, by the way, is now Black Lives Matter Plaza, which is fucking amazing. But the people will not be deterred. There are millions of people right now marching in the streets and getting results. Because we can't deny the hundreds of videos we've seen of callous police officers beating the shit out of people for no reason. None. And if you've ever been in a traffic citation hearing and you've listened to the cop lie about what you did, and you kept your mouth shut because you knew it was just going to get worse for you unless you were in front of a friendly magistrate, Well, guess what? It's laid bare now. Everybody can see that. There's a 75-year-old man who was a Catholic charity worker that got beat up in Buffalo and has a bleeding in his brain because of it. It's got to stop. It has to end. And if you support these tactics, if you support this brutality, and if you think this is all okay, I think you need to re-examine your priorities. Because remember, there are people in this country who are Nazi sympathizers, who are white supremacists, and back in the 30s wanted to ally with Nazi Germany. That included Henry Ford, Charles Lindbergh, some people you may have heard of in history. They were bad people. Those people are still around today. And if we don't get them underneath their rocks again, we're in serious trouble. This incident has affected me in a way viscerally that I can't really fully explain. Every night, my heart hurts. My head hurts. I can't sleep very well, and thankfully my dogs and my wife are around because honestly, my first impetus is to go to every march I can and fight for whatever we believe in. And fight for the goodness in the world. And then we're dealing with this pandemic. Look, sometimes things aren't about you. They're about everybody else. They're about the ability for society to function. And right now, we are at a crossroads. And hopefully this is an inflection point so we can get the real reforms we need to make sure the police stop being assholes to people. And if they are, you can actually sue them. Because right now, they have no accountability. So when people have no accountability, they're effectively above the law. And maybe, just maybe this one time, you can see past your ridiculous notion of race, which, by the way, is insane because, again, melanin content is the only difference. And you can help and be an ally. I, for one, refuse to let this happen in this country. This is the one country where this shit should not fucking happen. We saved the world from the Nazis. And I will be damned if that shit comes back on our watch and dishonors our grandparents' legacy and their memory. To close out here, I just want to say this. We have been through very tumultuous periods in this country before. We had the Civil War. We've had World War II. We had the Great Depression. We've had the Civil Rights period of the 1960s. But in all of those periods, we had people who crossed over from other generations who were around. In the Civil War, for example, there were still people who remembered the American Revolution because they were there. In World War II, we still had some Civil War vets who were alive, amazingly. In the Civil Rights Movement, we had World War II vets out there fighting in the streets with them. We had all of these people who crossed generational boundaries, who understood the struggle and knew what they had to do, and believed in freedom and democracy and all right, and all men are created equal. We're approaching a period where the youngest surviving World War II veterans are about 93 years old. They would have been 18 in 1945. Most of them are gone. My grandparents are gone. My great uncle's gone. But we cannot lose sight of what they did for us. We cannot lose sight of the horrors. Wondering what that is? Somebody firing off an automatic weapon in the woods. So thank you for proving my point. We can do this. We can get through this, but only if we are in this together. Thank you for listening, and you have yourself a wonderful day.